Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast produced by Angels Protection, Inc., where we amplify the voices of young mothers and women and the leaders shaping the systems, policies, and workplaces that influence their lives. I'm your host, Makaila Davis, founder and chairwoman of Angels Protection, Inc. And in our Women Leader series, we spotlight women whose leadership reflect courage, clarity, and a commitment to advancing equity. Women who understand that leadership is not just about influence, but about responsibility, access, and impact. Today's guest is a leader whose career sits at the intersection of advocacy, policy, and women advancement, and whose work continues to shape the future leadership in Philadelphia and beyond. So today, I want to introduce you guys to Meghan Pierce. Meghan, she joined Forum of Executive Women in 2023 and is its first president and CEO, becoming the leader of Philadelphia's premier professional women's organization. At the helm of the forum, Meghan leads membership engagement, strategic partnerships, advocacy on women's workplace issues, philanthropic initiatives, all in service of advancing women into the most senior levels of leadership. Established in 1977, the forum represents more than 600 women leaders who hold top executive roles across corporations, nonprofit organizations, public sector institutions that drive Philadelphia's regional economic and civic life. Prior to joining the forum, Meghan served as the executive director of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, where she navigated some of the most challenging election cycles in recent history while leading statewide efforts to protect and expand voting rights. Throughout her career in nonprofit and government leadership, Meghan has remained deeply focused on women advancement and advocacy, particularly in the areas of pay equity, political representation, and reproductive justice. Her leadership and impact has been widely recognized. Meghan was named to the City and State Pennsylvania's 2022 Nonprofit Power 100, the 2024 Above and Beyond Women's Awards, and the Philadelphia's Business Journal's 2024 40 Under 40. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts from George Washington University and a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Pennsylvania. So I just want to take the time to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to this conversation.
Now, same here. And I really just kind of want to start off by asking to begin, what first drew you to advocacy and women-centered leadership work?
Sure. Well, I like to say that I came into the world a raging feminist. So it's really who I am to my core. But I think the through line of it all is that I've always been drawn to the intersection of systems and people and really curious about how policy decisions, structures, civic participation, how all of that shapes women's lives. And early in my career, I saw how often women were excluded from decision-making tables, even when they were the ones who were deeply impacted by the outcomes. And I know you can relate to that, Michaela, with your focus on women's health. But for me, advocacy is a way to not only like name the gaps, but also to change them. And women-centered leadership is really just about ensuring women are present and powerful.
No, definitely. And what I'm hearing is that it's really important that we're focusing on women-centered leadership, and making sure that we have access to the resources that we need so that we can thrive in our retrospective roles in the field.
Absolutely.
Also, too, like you've led through moments of significant political and social change. So what values have anchored you throughout your career?
So the words that come to mind are equity, accountability, and I think courage. Equity is because, fairness doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention. And I think we can look at the history of women's political participation as a great example of that. There were key allies that stood alongside women in their fight to vote. Accountability, because that's a lot of what I do right now, knowing that leadership carries responsibility and making sure that we're holding leaders accountable for those without power. And then courage, because meaningful change often means pushing against deeply entrenched systems, even when it's uncomfortable. And I've had the opportunity to lead two legacy, women's organizations, the League of Women Voters and the Forum of Executive Women. And although they were founded for very, very different reasons, they both were founded to kind of disrupt systems, right? Like the League was formed to first as a suffrage opportunity for women, organizing around the right to vote. And then the forum was founded because there were really only a handful of women who held executive leadership positions at all at the time that it was founded. And the forum leadership got together and shared their experiences, kind of navigating those barriers to leadership. And both of those examples, it took a lot of courage to be able to say, we need our own space and we need a way to convene around issues that matter to us.
And I think that's really powerful too, like at the time that the forum was founded. Um, and for you to be able to like, kind of take on that role is huge. And also too, that goes into like my next question of as you stepped into being the first president and CEO of the Forum of Executive Women, how did you approach stepping into a legacy organization with a bold vision for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've been thinking a lot about the legacy of women's organizations, particularly in the city of Philadelphia, because next year the forum will celebrate 50 years in the city. And we're joined alongside all of these incredible women's organizations that were founded around the same time. We're all kind of having our 50th anniversary celebrations either this year or last year or in the next year. So organizations like Women's Way, Women's Law Project, Women's Against the Abuse, we're all honoring our legacy and thinking about what's next for our organizations. And it's really fun and interesting to think about all the women in Philadelphia organizing around the same time to create these institutions that led women forward and are still extremely relevant to the city and to women's interests now. So I think I approached my work with the forum and being the first CEO with just a deep respect for its history, what it meant for women in business to come together to share their experiences 50 years ago, and how much the work of the forum still matters. So balancing that deep respect for its history with my commitment to its future. So with 4 or 5 decades of impact, my role wasn't to reinvent the legacy, but to build on it, to help modernize our voice, to expand our reach, and to ensure we remain relevant and bold and a thought leader on women's leadership in the city. It's a great privilege that I take very seriously. And it's, one of the other honors of my role is to make sure that our membership reflects the city of Philadelphia and the women that lead it, because we are in this really great moment as women in the city, celebrating our 250th anniversary. You look around and you see all the women leading in these top spaces, and it's just a really exciting time. So to answer your question, I think I'm honoring the legacy and stepping into the future.
No, I definitely can attest to that. Just seeing the work that you're doing and being able to be a connector for
Hmm.
women. Because I think it's hard because a lot of us don't know that we're here in these roles. So having the former executive woman and then seeing, I know when I see it, I was like, oh, I would love to be a member of this and be a part of that. And then have, connected with so many women that I didn't even realize were already a member
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
organization. And it's like, wow, here we are. And then like going to the events, seeing more women that are in their roles that are VPs and CEOs, CFOs, or have their, founders. It's just a beautiful thing to see. And it's rare.
Yeah.
There's not many organizations at all that are doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's special. And I think what sets us apart is, there are women's organizations in the city that may be specific to an industry, but what the forum does is brings together women across all industries in the region. So as you kind of spoke to, it creates really energetic, interesting rooms, and I think feels like a safe space for women to meet other leaders who might share some of their challenges, some of their opportunities. I have a board member that always says the forum is just women who get it. And I really like that.
No, I can agree with that. Um, and also too, like the forum, it represents women at the highest levels of leadership. So
Mhm.
what gaps still exist for women in executive spaces today?
There are still a lot of gaps. You look at Philadelphia now and you see our first woman mayor, you see women, leading our top institutions, particularly nonprofit institutions, but the representation is still uneven, particularly for women of color. And power, I find, is often concentrated in ways that limit access. So the forum does a report every year called the Women in Leadership Report. And in particular, we measure Philadelphia's top 100 publicly traded companies. So those key players in Philadelphia's economy. And what that report reveals year over year is persistent gaps across all three measures that we look at, including women as CEOs, women in the boardroom, and also women as top earners. So, while we can look around and kind of sense the progress, there's still really consistent gaps. So that report would be a really nice thing to share, I think, with your audience to help them understand and kind of contextualize that data. So progress has been made, but parity, who really holds decision-making power and authority, that's still far from being achieved.
No, I definitely agree with that, especially when it comes to pay
Mm,
and sitting on boards. Um, and also, too, a lot of people don't know that there are boards that are paid, not just
hmm.
volunteer. That
Yes.
those opportunities do exist, that you don't just have to volunteer. So I think there still are many gaps in opportunities and knowing what type of opportunities you may want to go after that exist. Um, Also, too, like how for you, I would say, does advocacy and policy intersect with corporate and nonprofit leadership in advancing gender equity?
An interesting question. I think organizations do it differently. Um, I think, nonprofits, particularly in this time, have a real important role in, using their visibility, their missions to help shape policy. And that can be through education, a more traditional advocacy route. That can be through lobbying. That can be through, leveraging your expertise to help define, the laws. So nonprofits in particular play an interesting role. But in general, I think leaders shape culture, but policies shape outcomes. So it's really exciting to see when company executives, for example, engage in policy and advocacy and creating conditions where equity in the workplace can take root. And at the forum, we talk about pay transparency, family supportive workplace policies. These are all things that companies can do as advocates. So I think, there's different roles that we can all play kind of depending where we work and what the missions of our organizations are and what your company's commitment to those issues are.
No, I agree, especially that I think that, as you said too, like companies do it differently. So it's not really like a one size fits all. And also, like, what role do professional women's organizations play in shaping more equitable workplaces and economies?
I think we create collective power.
Mhm.
Organizations like the Forum connect women leaders across sectors, as we talked about. We elevate data, and through that data, we can hold companies and policymakers accountable. And then we can translate that individual influence into a systemic impact. So when you join the forum or an organization like us, similar to us, you're not just supporting, your own professional advancement, but you're seeking to say, I want to change the environment in which all women lead. So that has been one of the, I think, the most impactful parts of my job is noticing, there's a lot of influence within this organization, and how can we leverage it for good?
No, definitely. And I think also too, like there's so many amazing members that are part of the forum. And like when I look at it, I'm like, wow, I haven't even met not even a quarter of the women that are members of the organization. Um, but just seeing like when I interact with the social media presence on LinkedIn, and how many members there are that are in the comments, I'm like, well, wait, I know her, or I know her, or I've seen her somewhere. I think it's a really beautiful thing. And just as you said, like a collective coming together. Um,
Yeah.
and also too, like during your time with the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, you led through intensive election cycles. So what did that period teach you about leadership under pressure?
It taught me a lot. When I was at the League of Women Voters, I think the most um, challenging um, climate that we were navigating through was the COVID pandemic. In 2020, the League was supporting voters in voting by mail for the first time. Now, we had, as a Commonwealth, already passed vote by mail pre-pandemic, but then 2020 was the first time that we could actually see it implemented, which was actually great timing, because people could vote safely from the comfort of their own home, but it was new. And there was a lot of misinformation about it being shared around the internet. There were a lot of threats to poll workers. It was a very, very challenging time to be working in elections because of the pandemic and for for myriad other reasons, like the climate in general was just very charged. So I think what I learned through that experience was one, just great admiration for democratic institutions that withstood a lot of pressure. The people and structures that make democracy work, poll workers, the Pennsylvania State Department, and organizations like the League of Women Voters that exist for the sole purpose of providing voters with nonpartisan election information. And we were able to withstand the storm of that election cycle. Um, so I think the calm and clarity that I, practiced through moments of pressure, it really reinforced for me, the power of the democratic system, and it made it less abstract. This idea of protecting democracy, we saw it work, and we saw people be able to safely vote in record numbers. So it was a challenging time, but I learned a lot and left feeling very inspired.
And I think also too, like through those challenges, it really has helped prepare you for being in this role at the form of executive woman and leading over 600 women in your membership efforts that are in various different fields. And I think that kind of also goes into like, how do you think that voting rights, pay equity, and reproductive justice intersect in women's lived experiences?
Yeah, and I think you're asking about those three things because those are all things that I've sort of worked on in my past lives and in my current professional life. But they're really all centered around women's autonomy over her own body, her economic future, her civic voice. And I really believe that those issues are often siloed, but in women's lived experiences, they're actually deeply interconnected. And I feel passionate about all of them. So I think that's sort of the intersection. It's this concept of autonomy and the ability to make decisions that are right for you and your family at any point in your life.
No, I agree. And I think that all of the three they do intersect, and we have to make sure that we are continuing to do the work to advance it. That's why I really appreciate the form of executive woman and all the women that have became members of the organization because it really does push that agenda along. Um, but also, like, what responsibilities do leaders have to protect democratic participation and civic engagement?
A very essential one, I think. Protecting democracy does not have to be partisan. In fact, there's great resources available to business leaders in particular through organizations like the Committee of 70 in Philadelphia, who can, encourage their employees to vote and to use their platforms to help participation, to help with access to good, secure information. The league, we said all the time that democracy is not just depending on laws, but it also depends on leadership willing to uphold the values of democracy.
No, I agree. And I think that also too, organizations think that they can't do advocacy work when it comes to voting.
Mm-hmm.
But you can, but you just have to know the rules depending on your status with the government. So it's important to advocate, use your platform, and use your voice so we can continue to make change. Um,
Absolutely. You don't need to tell your employees who to vote for, but making it easier for them to vote, giving them flex time to vote, providing resources, nonpartisan resources. Those are all things that, leaders and employers can do.
I agree. And also, what advice would you offer women navigating leadership pathways today, especially those balancing advocacy with executive responsibilities?
It's a big question. We're in a very interesting time as women navigating leadership. So, if I could offer a piece of advice, it would be to not wait for permission if leadership is what you seek. Um, Build networks with intention, which I think you do really well, Makaila. Um, know your values. Recognize that leadership is not about being perfect or living up to a standard you might see, but it's about how you want to make an impact. And you asked about advocacy. I think remembering that advocacy and leadership are not in conflict, but they strengthen each other.
Now, I appreciate that advice for myself too.
Absolutely. It's very important to what you do.
And I also think too, like it's very critical, like you said, using your resources, your network, um, and not waiting for permission if you want to do leadership. Figuring out, especially if you get hired on a new company, if you want to be in a leadership role, learning that company and pursuing that, watching, doing trainings internally, seeing what leadership programs they might have available to you that you could just sign up for without permission from
Yeah.
the manager, and just start taking those courses. But I think a lot of those things are learned over time. And
Hmm.
it's also harder when you don't have a sponsor, someone
Hmm.
that can kind of guide you that
Hmm.
have done it, someone that has, if your aspirations are to lead a hospital, but you don't know anyone that has led a hospital,
Mm.
or you're not, in close vicinity to folks that have done that or may know someone that has done it that can connect you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why everyone who's listening, memberships to organizations are very important, like the form of executive woman, and getting to that point where you can become a member,
Yeah.
so you can make a greater impact within your community. Um,
Yeah. I'll plug a peer organization of the forum, which is called Power, another Philadelphia-based women's leadership organization that does not have specific requirements for membership, like a specific title. And they do fabulous events, including a speed network mentoring event that I'm actually participating in this year. So I'll plug them too as a great resource to tap into. It doesn't need to be just the forum, but that we have great peers in the city as well.
No, definitely. And I think that's really important for folks to understand too. If you do not qualify at a time for a specific organization, it could be anything that requires membership and requirements. Looking at organizations that they might have less stringent requirements, just so you can start getting involved until you get to the point where you qualify by title or experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are many organizations that I have joined where they're all requirement based. So, but you build yourself up to that point and you can get there. Um, so I think that's very important, like as you touched on that too, just starting
Yeah.
to get involved and get your feet.
Yeah. It's cool to see you modeling that, Makaila. I'm sure you're really inspiring to women in your network.
I appreciate that. I'm inspired by you.
Oh, thanks. That's
I
very nice.
am. I really, really am.
Yeah, I'm inspired by all of our members. I mean, it's my job is just to talk to interesting women all day. It's really the best job.
No, you have a really like amazing job. And just being able to see it through and, be able to get more members involved. A lot of the events that are hosted, like there was, I missed the golfing event that was last year, but when it comes to this year, I will be there because I love to golf.
Great. Yeah,
So,
definitely going to do another one before the summer. So I'll make sure to get that on your radar. It's a really great event. That's another great, nonprofit organization that I'll plug. That's our partnership with Her Club, which is another regional nonprofit organization run by a young woman who teaches the game of golf to women leaders who might not even know where to begin. And we know golf, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look on it, is really where a lot of business decisions happen. And women don't always have access to know how to even begin to golf. So that's what that nonprofit does. So I'll add that to my list of great resources as well for your audience.
no, I really appreciate that. And again, everyone, see golfing, things that you would not know, but being a part of a collective organization, you're able to gain those resources, so you can help leverage for your businesses and as you're growing in leadership. Um, and also, too, what legacy do you hope to leave through your leadership at the Forum of Executive Women?
I hope to protect our history and move us into the next 50 years as we head into our 50th anniversary next year. I think that looks like a couple of different things, a strong, inclusive pipeline of leaders, an organization that continues to set the standard for what it means to be an executive woman. Also, I would, leaning into our data driven advocacy, holding businesses accountable for their advancement of women, and celebrating women as leaders. Another legacy I'm very excited about is we're relaunching our foundation arm this year. and building a great new program called the Catalyst Award that is going to identify rising star women within the region. And I think, that initiative is going to be another great program that I help get off the ground as part of my time at the forum. And I'm happy to tell you a little bit more about that later in the podcast, maybe.
No, I love this, and the fact that you guys are also opening up the foundation arm is really, really beautiful. Um, and also too, like, what gives you hope about the future of women's leadership?
I think women lead differently. And when we are given access to power, when we are given access or create our own access to roles and to leadership positions, we help companies, we help, businesses, we help regions, policymakers, we help everyone to thrive. And I've seen that in action in some of the companies that my members lead. I've seen it in, Mayor Parker's leadership in Philadelphia, and that really does give me hope that whether we're, bringing our own chair or asking for a seat at the table, we just do it differently.
I agree, and I like how you touched on whether we're bringing our own chair, we're asking for a seat at
Mm.
the table.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
like that metaphor a lot.
yeah, and I think even for me, I had to learn a lot of times I have been having to ask,
Mm.
for a seat at the table or bring my own chair. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
rarely it's that it's someone bringing me to that table. So,
Yeah,
I try to do a lot of mentorship and sponsorship now. Mentorship has been great for me, but really sponsorship, bringing the younger generation through that door.
yeah,
So, and I
that's
touched
really
on,
inspiring.
yeah, it's really important. It's something that's dear to my heart because a lot of times I find that there's a gap between, folks bringing them through the door.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and,
But yeah, and that next generation that you're talking about, I mean, they're inspiring in themselves. I think they're demanding more, more transparency, more equity, more representation. They're not as willing to accept the status quo, and that's another thing that gives me hope. The way that they're approaching the systems that are not necessarily built for them. And I find that really inspiring too.
which is really beautiful. And there's a gap because I think there's also, they don't know that there are folks in these leadership roles and how easy accessible it could be to them on what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard. I think it's hard for them on how do they approach a CEO or a CFO
Yeah.
or, just a VP or board member and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
how did you become a board member?
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
are you on, the board of this huge healthcare system? And how do you have any advice for me that they might be a little bit deterred from asking those questions?
Yeah.
But I want you guys to understand it's okay to ask, and you should. You really, really should.
The worst they can say is no or point you in an even better direction. I think some advice I'll offer unsolicited is if you are approaching a top leader or someone you find a little bit intimidating or has a big role, a great thing to ask is, for their time to give you some advice or a referral to someone else who can. And that is often a great way to, open a door or make sure that you get some good advice, leaving with the next step, even if that door in particular is not going to open.
And I like how you touched on the referral part because
Mm.
if they are not able to, they definitely do know someone that can.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So always try to leave that room for that. And also, how can listeners, especially young women, engage with the forum's work and broader advocacy efforts?
I would say follow us on LinkedIn because that's where we share the most about events that we have coming up. That's where we share our reports. I talked about our Women in Leadership report. We also have a pay equity report, and I take both of those on the road. So always willing to come in and talk about the findings of those reports. I mentioned the Catalyst Award. Nominations for that are going to open on March 1st. So that's a great thing to look into. We're looking for leaders that, have made great progress in their careers, but just need that little extra push of support that the forum can help with. The other thing that I'll share about is our mentoring program that is designed for women in their careers about 8 to 15 years of professional experience. We create a cohort of mentees and we bring in forum leaders to support them through monthly peer circles. So this year's circle will open applications in the fall. So that's another great resource to look out for. And then I'll just also again plug our peers at Power, our peers at Herd Club. There's really a lot of ways to plug into the leadership organizations of the city, and I hope your listeners take advantage of all of them.
And please, guys, please do take advantage of all these resources that she was so kindly to name off. And follow them on LinkedIn as well, too. Please utilize LinkedIn. I started utilizing LinkedIn, I was 18. And that was the best decision I made in my whole life. And now seeing where it is now, it's so funny because someone recently was like, "Oh, you're so famous. You have like 17,000 followers on there." I'm like, I didn't even know how many followers I had on my own LinkedIn. I just use it so much more than Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. It really does help push your career, and you can network with people from all over the globe. So that's the
Absolutely.
beauty of
It's a
it.
fun platform.
It is.
Are you
Once
one of
you,
those people, Makaila, that scrolls LinkedIn instead of Instagram?
yeah. I am. I'm on it like too much. Sometimes it'll be like
Yeah,
2 a.m. when I'm just
yeah,
doing work and I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'll just scroll on LinkedIn and see what people are doing. But
yeah.
everyone's doing amazing things, whether somebody's graduating with a degree or
Hmm.
starting or getting a
Yeah.
certification. It's very inspiring.
It is very inspiring. A little more feel good than TikTok or things that you're getting served an algorithm of content. This is very professionalized. It's a nice space. It's a nice platform.
It is. I think once you figure out how to use it, I think that's the gap for LinkedIn for a lot of folks. They don't know
Yeah.
how to use it. They don't know how to set up their accounts so it looks
Mm,
appealing.
mm,
But once you figure that part out, it really it does change your life. And
that's
I've
great
seen
advice.
people that have like 200,000 followers, and I'm like, wow, I don't even know how you got there, but I love to see it.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
so I really just wanted to say, Megan, thank you so much for your leadership and your unwavering commitment to women's advancement and your dedication to building systems that are more just, inclusive, and accountable. Your work reminds us that leadership is not just about reaching the top, it's about widening the ladder for those coming behind you. So, to our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, visit angelsprotection.org to learn more about how we support women, mothers, and future leaders through advocacy, education, and community care. And always remember, silence protects systems, not people. So let's keep breaking it together. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Makaila. This was so much fun.
No, of course, thank you so much. And like, comment, and subscribe, and follow the forum on LinkedIn. It will be below. Bye, guys.